everybody in Facebook land, and hello everybody who's here. Thank you for your patience. We got it up and running. This class is actually a lot of fun. I started teaching this class about 2 years ago because there was such a demand for it. People kept saying, I hear this stuff in the news about it being inflamed and why is it not good for me and all this stuff. I said, I need to address it because we know that actually is tied to virtually every illness of modern living. And so if you can actually live your life in such a way through your care and also the care you give yourself at home, you'll actually see your body will last a lot longer and a lot better. You'll get the number of miles out of it you expect, right? Your warranty will not run out, so to speak. So actually call this class Turn Down the Heat, Reducing Inflammation to Live Better and Feel Better. And the nice thing is that as you turn down the chemistry in your body that tends to make the cells heat up and actually cause problems, you actually will actually feel better too, because there's a strong component of this. Everybody here's had inflammation before, like with a sunburn, right? You know what that feels like? Nobody touched me. Even a little breeze can irritate you too. Well, that tends to go down overall in your body when things are going well. So in this class, I'd like to say these things. These are the common values that I hope we're opening on, is that you'd like every here like to live as long and as well as possible, have as many quality years. It's very safe to assume. That's why you're here, right? You'd like to feel good and functioning while you're doing it. And next thing you have to remember that you know this won't happen by chance, right? If you actually follow the standard American diet, you and I had this conversation. What does standard American diet stand for? SAD. It's sad, right? What most Americans are eating, they're actually boiling themselves to death slowly over time. So if you're willing to make some changes, we will actually do very well with this class, and you will do very well with your life. So what you're going to learn is what inflammation is and what it does. Actually, parts of inflammation are good for us. Okay, this is from the movie. What is it called? Inside Out, right? A great flick. That's the guy angry. When I think about inflammation, that comes to mind right away. We're going to talk for sure about how diet influences inflammation and a few other things too, and how not to set yourself on fire with your food. Now, I will also say this, though, that exercise also deflames you, too. I could do a whole class on that by itself, but I'm just going to throw that in there as like a bonus. When you think about exercise, you say, I'm sore the next day. Yes, that's like a localized inflammation that you get from breaking down tissue, and you can come back stronger. But as an overall sense, people who exercise have less inflammation in their bodies than people who are sedentary. Isn't that neat? So getting up and moving is a good thing, okay? All right, so Kirsten, you'll soon understand. When you see this picture, what do you think of? Does that make it is that a happy scene in your mind? No. Like most people have had kids say, that doesn't look so good because we have a danger for burning, and this kid has no idea what danger they're in, right? Well, if I do my job right tonight, you'll have the same reaction when you see this going on, okay? Now, you might think, well, are we concerned primarily about the hot grease that this just came out of? It could be, right? You could actually touch food that's so hot it burns you, but really, it's what it does to this kid inside his body once he eats it, okay? We're not saying we can't have these foods as vacation foods once in a while, but in your staples, in fact, the top three consumed vegetables in the United States, they actually let you count. Number one is ketchup. Number one is French fries. Number two is ketchup. Number three is iceberg lettuce. Not exactly the most healthy part of vegetable kingdom that we have there. You will actually have the same type of reaction when you see a kid considering eating that. A lot of times that's you. So this body has always been this way. As long as the human body has existed, the possibility of actually having inflammation go out of control is there. However, our knowledge of it has changed. Now, this is actually going back to 1961. Time magazine did this report, which is actually a reflection of what the research is being done. And they say in there that please be careful about saturated fats because we concern that these things could clog your arteries and actually have you develop heart disease. So what has been the mantra for the last 50 to 70 years? Stay away from eggs, stay away from, lard, stay away from things like this. And it turns out that it's not the case. In fact, here's Time magazine. So here we are now, 2014, how many years later that is. That says we were wrong about saturated fats. They don't cause heart disease at all. Okay, so again, this is a tough thing. In many respects, it's the artificial fats that we create, but it's also the ones that we actually eat that are from grains. That's the biggest thing. They wanted us to move towards canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, and those things are definitely pro-inflammatory, and if you cook in them, it's even more so, all right? So inflammation is now finally being discussed and addressed. And you can look around. Dr. Josh Axe is actually a chiropractor who really has done a great job getting the information out on the internet. Here's Harvard Medical School talking about understanding inflammation, and it talks about how it relates to immunity, allergies, your joints, your brain, and all sorts of things like this. And then Time magazine says it's actually the secret killer, how inflammation is linked to heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases. In fact, inflammation plays a role in every disease, and the top killers in our country, which are usually non-infectious ones, it's actually a major player in there. So I want to make sure that you understand this is not a small topic, and it needs to be discussed. Well, there's two types of inflammation that we have. The acute one is the one that God gave you for situations such as sunburns, falling and skinning your knee, okay, getting stung by a mosquito. The acute one, what's nice about it is it actually serves a purpose in healing. So, for example, if I have an infection locally, like something, ringworm, some type of viral bacterial infection, getting a burn from touching a stove, having allergies where I might be reacting to, say, ragweed or something like that, a trauma where I actually have swelling, right? Most people know they want to put ice on it to kind of control the inflammation that's going on that way. A cut, stabbing, frostbite actually initiates a form of inflammation. One of our patients just today came in and showed me pictures of her feet. She had inflammation from actually hauling her paddle boat or kayak out of the water onto a beach that was full of poison ivy. And lots of fun. I mean, these feet look like they had been through walking on, whatever, just broken glass or something, really tough. And of course, chemical irritation too. You spill something on your skin. And typically, it's short-lived. When we say acute, it means it's very quick, and it does its purpose to heal. In fact, there's parts of healing that will not happen unless inflammation happens. But it's designed to be there and done when it serves its purpose. The problem with chronic inflammation is what? It's ongoing, just keeps going, keeps going. So they actually list the common causes here, or things that will actually affect you. Cardiovascular disease, autism, where the brain's actually inflamed, rheumatoid arthritis, which is actually an autoimmune disorder where your body begins to attack yourself. Any type of autoimmune disease, lupus, things like this, to being depressed, believe it or not. Neurological disease like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and so forth. And then cancer too, all have very much a chronic element to them, which is why they keep going on. If we can learn ways to intervene, we actually have a better chance of actually halting those and actually getting better naturally, even if you choose to do also things that would be more traditional medical care too. So here's the acute inflammatory response. What typically goes with it, these are the Latin words they use for it. So there's redness, heat, swelling, and pain, or rubor, calor, tumor, and dolor. We learn those in school, and we know what that looks like, right? When you sprain your ankle, man, look at it, swells up, it actually gets colorful. The next few days, it actually turns all the colors of the rainbow, green, yellow, red, orange, because the blood's pooling in there. You lose fat function. It's very fast, very strong, but it's short term. It's your body's innate response to those things, and white blood cells come into the area just in case there's actually something introduced. Like if you cut yourself, you don't want things coming in through your skin that would get to your bloodstream. So white blood cells are actually attracted to that, and they start to attack those things that could be potential pathogens that would go through your body. There's a fibrosis of repair, which means your body lays down scar tissue, but it's mild. And many times there's often little to no residual from it, meaning you have full function regained, no harm done, and a year later you say, I can't even remember that I fell and scraped my head on the ground. That's a good thing, right? If you care for it right. And that's what you experience with a bug bite, a wound, or a cold, or a flu. Chronic inflammation on the hand is definitely not your friend. So here's a nice little slide that I found from a lecture. It actually is a reaction to an internal irritant, injury, or infection that's caused. It will actually cause those same things, but it may be mild at first. Like when you eat French fries, do you really feel like, boy, that really hurts? No. Do you feel like you're swollen? Be too many, maybe, right? We'll write this, but it does increase inflammation. And there's an adaptive immune response that happens. The big players are the macrophages, which are the big immune cells, lymphocytes, and so forth act. The fibrosis repair can be moderate to severe, which means when you heal from this type of inflammation, the scar tissue is laid down and actually gets laid down in a very random sort of patchwork, and actually it becomes something that becomes very weak, sensitive, and actually not as strong or stiff. This is the classic thing when somebody actually has a very bad wound and nerves get trapped in there. Who has a grandparent that can tell when a storm's coming tomorrow? They start saying, oh, I can feel the old thing flaring up. Yeah, right? So that's actually part of chronic inflammation. It often has chronic residual. And so it's what you experience with ongoing lifestyle issues and choices. And so chronic inflammation definitely plays a role in all these things that you see listed out here. Infectious things, people are more prone to getting infection, having heart attacks or strokes, cancer, diabetes, respiratory illnesses, and so forth. It modulates or plays a role in all those things. And so my best thing I can do is have you leave here today making some choices that will actually allow you to not go through that. Again, I have no problem if you actually have, the occasional vacation meals, but if you eat the way most people do, you're promoting those factors right there too. And so Dr. Axe or Dr. Jockers put this out, and it just shows the organ systems that happen when you actually have chronic inflammation, what you can expect to see throughout your lifetime. So for example, in the brain, it can actually lead to things such as depression, poor memory, Alzheimer's disease, and multiple sclerosis, cardiovascular things where you start to inflame the arteries. And what happens is, as you start to create these nicks in the walls of the artery, the body starts to stick things in there to heal it, which often looks like calcium and cholesterol that get stuck in there, and then it starts to grow and grow and grow. And before you know it, blood clots are starting to stick there, which is now the precursor to having a heart attack. Muscles can get very sore. It can show up as things even like carpal tunnel syndrome or polymyalgia rheumatica. If you're chronically inflamed, they've actually shown that when kids drink a lot of soda, even kids can actually get osteoporosis. because it actually starts to leach the calcium and magnesium from your bones to bring your pH into balance. That's a form of inflammation. Skin can actually show up as things like, rashes, dermatitis, and so forth. Your thyroid gland, this is a big one for women with autoimmunity. A lot of women we talk to have Hashimoto's or things like this where their body starts to attack their own thyroid and eventually it burns out. And now they're taking thyroxine the rest of their life. Lung tissues, actually having things like asthma, reactive airway disease. Things, there's a lot of illnesses that are actually diagnoses of convenience when all the other tests have shown no things. So the doctors say we've run all these tests. We've done upper and lower GI. We've done all these different tests. You have irritable bowel syndrome, which was it telling you? Your bowels are grumpy, which is what you told them when you came in. Okay, that's something you're gonna have to address when you eat this, but also things like gastroesophageal reflux disease, Crohn's disease, celiac. Kidney inflammation can actually cause problems where actually it creates high blood pressure, nephritis, and if it's long-term, kidney failure. And of course, who's heard of fatty liver disease now? Have you heard about this? This is the thing where people are getting so much sugar that it's getting backed up into the system and the liver's having to get involved in this thing and it starts to look like, they call it non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. It's really a tough thing to see there. We're seeing more and more people coming into that. They pick it up on ultrasound and so forth. So what foods make us chronically inflamed? Well, the big one, the player, is actually grain-derived fats. About 70 years ago or so, in the 40s and 50s, our government decided we didn't want to ever have a famine in our country, and grains can be stored for long periods of time. So there was a big push to actually subsidizing grains. So wheat, corn, soy, all those things are subsidized. We actually have quite a bit of stuff on hand in the event that if we were to have a year where there's no harvest, at least we can take those to make something from them. So the oil that's derived from corn, sunflower, safflower, soybean, canola, and so forth actually are what we call omega-6 fatty acids. I think we actually have a slide on this. There it is. Yeah, I'll go into that. But just trust me that these foods here, guys, if those are eaten in the high levels, you'll be chronically inflamed. We're not saying we don't need those things. You do need omega-6s, but we are eating so out of whack for those. The average American is way high on those. Number two, we're eating lots of refined or excessive carbohydrates. The big offenders here are sugar and high fructose corn syrup. Your body, to bring those things into balance when you eat them, if you just raw table sugar or high fructose corn syrup, is your insulin levels have to spike to get that, and then it actually overcorrects, so it brings all that in. What happens when you eat a Snickers bar? You have this immediate hit of energy, and what happens an hour later? You have to crash, right? Because your body had to work hard. In fact, I heard this weekend at a seminar, you basically have about 5 gallons of blood or so in your body that would fit in a bucket. You only actually have in a given time about a teaspoon or tablespoon of blood or sugar in your bloodstream. If you simply added one more half teaspoon to it, you would be considered to be pre-diabetic. Add one more teaspoon, they would be considered to be like approaching diabetes. Isn't that crazy? That's how finely regulated your body has to keep those sugars in line. And you can actually create that issue pretty quickly, especially if you're eating like this, right? Is there anything here that doesn't contain sugar, do you think? Probably not, right? Okay, and then lastly, things that are highly processed or treated foods that are chock full of additives, preservatives, herbicides, and pesticides, they are also pro-inflammatory too, and these things have a nasty way of kind of hiding in your body fat. They actually, when people go through detox or start to lose weight, a lot of times they'll say, I feel like I'm getting the flu. And what's happening is they're freeing this stuff out of their system to start to be excreted. So if you can read labels very carefully and look for these things, that would be a great idea to eat as few of those as you can on a regular basis for sure. So the grain-based oils, we're going to go through these one at a time. They're high in what we call omega-6 fatty acids. And if you went back to our ancestors who actually ate food that was found on the ground or picked from trees or hunted, hunter-gatherers actually had a ratio of about 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 of omega-6s to omega-3s. That ratio is something you can even have tested in your blood. The next time you go in for a physical and you want to ask your doctor, I want to see if I'm pro-inflaming my body because of the fats I'm eating, ask them to run a fatty acid profile. It will show you that in the last 90 days how many omega-6s, which is going to be your grain-based stuff, omega-3s, which are found primarily in flax, and what else? What do we feel that omega fish? Yeah, seafood, right? And then there's omega-9s, which are found in olive oil. Okay, and then the other category they look for is what are called trans fats. Trans fats do not appear anywhere in nature. Trans fats are what? They're man-made. It's when we take these green oils, we superheat them, pump them full of hydrogen, and turn them into a plastic. If you look at any label that you read and says partially hydrogenated anything, not good for us. Okay, it's actually things your body will do something with it amazingly, but it's not going to be good. So chronic illnesses actually go up significantly when this ratio goes to 4 to 10 to 1. And they say now that in the prison system, if you look, well, the average American diet now is about 22 to 1 because we eat so many processed foods and so many grain-based foods that we're just walking around like we're just simmering at 210 degrees on the stove waiting to boil over. And in the prison system where a lot of these meals are pre-made, they have a ratio of 50 to 1. These people, when you see a prison riot, you might actually say some of that may have been actually dietarily driven because they're just so inflamed they just can't help themselves. Okay, by increasing omega-3s in your diet, it has helped many people with the chronic degenerative illnesses. And this is actually the pathway. Usually we have one person in the crowd who actually is a big chemistry buff. Now, none of you probably are. Maybe Kim is. I don't know. But so what this shows you is this is a pathway that happens. So if you eat lots of grain-based oils from those foods, they come down this pathway and they come down and they form something called arachidonic acid. This is the big player. When you see this, that is just a few steps away from becoming these things that are called PGE2, prostaglandin E2, and leukotriene B4. Those are absolutely pro-inflammatory. When people take ibuprofen to quote-unquote control inflammation, they're blocking this last little step from actually happening through here. You'll actually see that NSAIDs or ibuprofen and so forth block this. But look what else also have on here too. There's a reason why we carry things that actually carry ginger and turmeric and so forth, which are actual foods your body recognizes, because these things actually do the exact same thing. They actually block this. They don't do it as fast, but it really does feel good there too. And so we want to prevent this halfway from happening for two ways: eating less of it, and number two, blocking its effects if you can. On the other hand, omega-3s, which are found in green vegetables, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and so forth, and from things that are wild-fed meats, things that have eaten grass and fresh fish, those promote this way, and they turn into two things, EPA and DHA. EPA is the one that is really good for keeping your blood running smooth. If you want to hear about fish oil preventing heart attacks and strokes, it keeps your platelets from sticking together, so it's anti-inflammatory. Also, DHA is the one that is actually the one that turns your brain into very highly functioning tissue. It actually lets your neurotransmitters go through more quickly. A mother who actually eats high levels of omega-3s of this type right here and gets this DHA in there, they say their children on the average have about 10 to 20 points higher IQ just because they had omega-3s in their diet. They make their brain from other stuff. So again, if you're thinking of having kids, that's very important. But when they come down here, they promote two different things, PGE3 and leukotriene B5. Those are anti-inflammatory. So these things need to be in balance, guys. I'm not saying that all inflammation is bad. I just went through why it's good in many cases. But if you are out of balance where this is what you're eating most of the time, that really sets you up to actually have that chronic inflammation. And even small things like a sunburn or a cut can be really bad. So number two, we want to reduce our high intake of refined carbohydrates. When we say refined, we have taken some type of sweeten that's in actually nature, some type of sugar, and really concentrated it. So like you look at sugar cane. When I was in Bolivia on a missions trip this is back in 2007, I think it was, it takes 10,000 pounds of sugar cane to make 300 pounds of sugar. And so the rest of it is actually all siphoned off. They make chaff out of it and they burn the rest of it off, and man, does it smell. You walk through Bolivia and the sugar cane fields, it smells like somebody's making creme brulee all day. Just that burning sweet smell. Unbelievable. Okay? So when it's that concentrated, what happens is your body's insulin will shoot up. And so sustained high insulin levels actually causes eventually something called insulin resistance, where your pancreas cannot keep up and you cannot get sugar into your cells. Insulin resistance over time creates something called type 2 diabetes, where you actually have high blood sugars in your bloodstream all the time, making wounds not heal well, poor circulation, infections more likely, and chronic inflammation. So one thing you want to make sure you know about when you eat foods is, who's ever heard of the glycemic index before? Okay, so the phenomenon we talked about with the Snickers bar, a Snickers bar probably has a glycemic index of like 120. I mean, it's like really chock full of those things. But look at this. For example, like rice bran or asparagus or grapefruit. Grapefruit only has one of about 25. They actually give anything that's below 55 is considered to be a low glycemic index, which means you can eat that and not really have to worry about getting that sugar rush and actually taxing your pancreas. Between 56 and 69, that's considered medium, and if it's over 70, it's high. So there's some real surprises on here. If you take a look at this, you'll see that, for example, an apple, which is relatively sweet, is actually only 38. Okay, so again, do diabetics need to be careful about their blood sugars? Yes, but you can probably safely eat an apple. Okay. On the other hand, look at this. A white bagel, does that taste all that sweet? Not really, but it's 103. Right? That should get everybody's attention. Like, man, how much do I want to, stack my body up to fail here? So even taco shells get a rating of 97, right? So I would just encourage you to find a chart like this. It's really helpful. Know your glycemic index foods so you don't eat things that are chock full of sugars that will go into your bloodstream and spike your insulin levels and so forth. Okay? And number three, watch your intake of processed and treated foods. Now, this is a really nice blow up here from Dr. Axe. I like this. What happens when something goes into a factory to be processed is it typically changes its nature to a less favorable state. So let's take the apple we talked about before. Apples, you pick one off the tree, what does it have in it? Lots of good stuff, right? Water, fiber, vitamins, and actually about 10 to 20,000 things that we call polyphenols, things that are made in nature. We can't make them in labs. God put them there for us to be healthy, right? And some foods are phenomenal in those things. You eat it, it's very satisfying and so forth. On the other hand, if we take that apple and put it into a factory, and let's say one end of it we actually turn it into, let's say we turn it into an apple pie. Well, there's still apple in there, right? but it's been changed, hasn't it? We put some sugar in there, some white crust and so forth. Let's say we turn it into something like apple sauce. Same type of thing. And there's still apples in there, great, but the enzymes have been denatured. It actually sits on the shelf for a long period of time. How about Apple Jacks? Okay, cereal that has taken some sort of essence of this, and it's put in with sugar and so forth. And then lastly, how about an apple flavored Jolly Rancher in the candy aisle? There's not a single bit of apple in that at all, right? So the more processed things are, they're typically losing the things that nature puts in that are good. You tend to lose vitamins and minerals and enzymes, and you start to put things in that you don't need, like preservatives and so forth. So what tends to happen is when you actually have foods that have all these things added to them, this is actually a snapshot of your gut. This is actually a really healthy gut over here. Your gut cells, you guys know about the thing where they talk about how your gut actually has enough surface area to cover like a football field? All these little projectiles that are trying to absorb things for you. Here they are. They're supposed to have these really nice tight junctions between those types of cells. So when you have things passing through, as all of us do, things like, things that can be irritating like gluten or living organisms and so forth, or these tissues, they're supposed to stop that and prevent it getting through there. A diet rich in these things, and by the way, just so you know, they're supposed to absorb it, process it in the cell, and then actually put it into your bloodstream here where it goes to your liver to be processed or used for fuel in your muscles. But here on this side, you can see somebody actually had some problems. They've been eating things that contain lots of preservatives and additives, and now those cells have broken down. So this is what we call leaky gut syndrome. Who's ever heard of that before? Some people have never heard of it before, but it's a real phenomenon. You actually break these junctures between the cells, and so these things have no problem passing through and getting right to your bloodstream where it should not happen. The problem is that this tends to create an immune response that's really strong. You guys have heard about these kids that actually have had like the really strong reactions to peanuts. They think at some point, and sometimes they think it's from the peanut oil used in making vaccines and so forth, that little proteins from the peanuts get into their bloodstream directly from the shot or whatever. So the first time they're exposed, your immune system says, wait a minute, this can't be, it's not supposed to be here. You're supposed to break this down into little amino acids. So the second time you're exposed to it, your immune system goes wackadoodle. That's what they call these anaphylactic reactions. The kid has to have an EpiPen to shoot themselves in the leg or they're going to stop breathing and die. It's not a good situation. The cool thing is, we actually know of one kid who actually went through something called oral interventional therapy, OIT, where they start to give them just little trace amounts of those things, and they put it in their tongue and stuff, and eventually they learn their immune system. This kid now can go to birthday parties where they have peanuts and no problem. It's actually he actually learned his way out of it. His immune system was taught a new thing. Well, in the case of the leaky gut syndrome, there are programs we have, and I have some friends who do functional medicine designed to actually help you heal that leaky gut so things don't go through directly to the bloodstream and cause things like malabsorption, autoimmunity, food intolerances, blood-brain barrier problems where you actually break the thing that's supposed to protect your brain from this stuff, and chronic systemic inflammation. You can heal that, but it takes about 6 to 12 months to do it. You'll have to really watch your diet, and you have to really make sure you get lots of good supplementation to help those tissues heal. So if you want some help with that, please ask me about it afterwards. We'll talk about it. So how you that, but if you come to this class, I don't charge you for it. Number two, when you go in to have your blood work done, you can actually have your doctor order what's called a C-reactive protein. This is actually kind of a measure of your overall general levels of inflammation. You can actually have the fatty acid profile done, which is measuring omega-6s, 3s, 9s, and so forth. Knowing your A1C levels and your fasting blood sugar. And then lastly, there's one called the gut Zoomer test that is specific to gluten and gliadin. If you react to those foods, if you suspect you have an allergy to those things, have that test done. They can measure what you're actually in this too. Now, those are very nice things to have done. It gives you numbers. If you're kind of the numbers person, you want to know where do I fall in the spectrum of things, have it done. But it's safe to say if you actually feel and look like this guy, you probably have chronic inflammation. Okay, look at these things going on there. Obesity, diabetes, gingivitis, right? People actually have chronically inflamed gums. That's an external manifestation of inflammation. If you've been told you have some type of, say, blockage in some type of artery or whatever, some eye disorders being inflamed, joint pain, classically called arthritis, cancers of the digestive tract and so forth, all these things, guys, are recurring infections and injuries. If little things seem to every little thing you do seems to injure you, okay, good chance you're inflamed, okay? So that would be a good thing to know about yourself for sure. So let's go through the deflame practices that should really help you in this whole process. We're going to make it easy. So first of all is actually eat less of this and more of that. So is it a surprise that these colorful foods with all these polyphenols would be a better choice, right? I mean, you look at this list and say, without even knowing what the slide was about, if I took all the words off it, I'd said, which one should you eat more of? I hope you would pick the one on the right. Now, we've had a great job of the food companies marketing this to us, right, as a quick, easy way to do things. One person said to me, Doc, if I'm on to eat, I'm fast, cheap, and easy. That's what I am. Okay. Well, how about we made ourselves from these things? They take a little bit longer, but actually, a freshly washed apple takes no longer to eat or to prepare than this does right here. Okay. So again, if you're doing like 80-20 of this, congratulations. If you're doing better than that, if you're eating like 90-10, the fresh and natural, stick with it. Great stuff. Okay. If you're concerned that you have any reaction to certain foods, let us know and we'll actually get you tested for those things too. Here's what the evidence says what Americans actually are eating. Amongst U.S. adults, we're actually eating about 1.1 servings of fruit and 1.6 of serving vegetables. Right? That's not even 2 to 3. Well, it's not even 3 servings. That's pretty sad, isn't it? Okay. So in American diet, the total average day is 2.7. 5 servings a day is the bare minimum you have to eat to see positive effects in health, but only 1 in 10 of Americans gets that. And that's if you count ketchup, French fries, and iceberg lettuce. Pretty sad, right? Okay, 7 to 9 servings of fruit is better. 9 to 13 is optimal. So here's what that looks like. I actually gave a talk with these fine folks. This is my friend Michaela, and this is actually, she's a nurse, and I think she's in Sioux Falls. But about 7 years ago, we gave a talk, and here she's holding 1 fruit and 1 vegetable. Okay, not a bad start. I'm holding 5 to 7. She's holding 9 to 13. Now, you look at that and say, how could I chew that much? Okay, well, there's ways to cook it in ways that it's easier. You can juice some of those things, and also, you've heard me mention this at various other classes we have. Here's an easy way to get 5 to 7 in a capsule. Okay, what Juice Plus has done is it has taken organic fruit matter, taken out all the sugar, all the fiber, all the water. You get the pure goodness of the plant in there too. And that, for me, in most days, that is actually about 1/3 to half of my fruits and serving vegetables. Okay, the other half is what I actually get from my diet, and so I know that's good. If you actually juiced this much in a day, you'd be spending somewhere between about $6 to $10 a day on that stuff. Juice Plus is a fraction of that. It's really good stuff, and they know it actually does benefit you too. That's what it looks like. So you have to ask yourself, what am I eating there? Most people will say, I'm probably not this low, but I'm definitely not this much. I'm probably somewhere in here. Let's try to move it up to the next level if you can. If you're getting 5, let's see if you can get to 6 to 7, eventually 8 to 9, and so forth. And I think a good rule of thumb is always make sure that you eat this type of food first in a meal, and then see if you have room for the other stuff. Don't save the fruits and vegetables for later when they're cold and you're full. Okay, that's not a good idea. All right. Deflating practice number 2: eat a Mediterranean diet. So who's ever heard of that before? Yeah, there's actually a lot of evidence that the people who live around the Mediterranean, because what's available to them, live a lot longer than most other cultures as a whole, because their diet is actually naturally anti-inflammatory. It contains lots of things such as fruits and vegetables is the staple of their diet. They eat greens, but they also eat other things like beans and so forth that are not so much. And then they eat things like seafood that is chock full of omega-3s. Okay, the food chain in the sea goes like this. It goes from like essentially algae to plankton to the smaller little things to the bigger things, and eventually you have these fish like salmon and tuna that contain tons of omega-3s that have condensed in there. They also eat things. If they eat dairy, it actually is from grass-fed cows. There's a world of difference between drinking milk from a cow that's been grass-fed versus one that's been corn-fed, because corn is a grain. It's going to be pro-inflammatory. A grass-fed cow, anti-inflammatory. And you'll notice that sweets and so forth, or like heavy meats, are a real rare treat there. It's not like a staple like it would be in the Midwest kind of thing. Okay? And so again, they say these diets are chock full of things like polyphenols and other antioxidants that help you not damage tissue. Even, believe it or not, actually your morning cup of coffee contains polyphenols too, which can be helpful. But if you wanted to learn how to do that, there are entire cooking books devoted to that thing. You can learn to do it. If you start having even 3 meals a week that were based on the Mediterranean diet, that'd be great, and you'll find yourself that you like them more. Okay? Supplement with whole food concentrates. I mentioned Juice Plus before. And what's nice about this is if you actually eat or consume their capsules with one of those shakes per day, you're actually getting somewhere between 40 and 50 of all those things right there in a very concentrated form. And I love that. And what's nice is, I want to tell you guys, if you are interested in this stuff, they just came out with a new thing that any person that's taking this as an adult can sponsor a child through age 25 for free, which is amazing. So those kids learn how to do it. They have this study going with has over 250,000 people involved. And they've shown that when kids start to consume more and more of this, that actually they get sick less often. They go to school more often. They don't have as many doctor's appointments. I mean, how can you lose? You're cutting the cost in half and you're doubling the benefit. How cool is that, right? Really neat stuff, okay? Defeating practice number 4, supplement with concentrated omegas. Juice Plus does make one. If you're concerned that you're a vegan or a vegetarian and you say, I don't want to eat meat, oils, or whatever like this, they want us derived entirely from plant-based material, including the capsule. The capsule is not made from gelatin. You can also take fish oil. We actually carry one called Innate Choice. This Innate Choice, in my opinion, is actually one of the premier ones in the planet. That's why I carry it. They go to the extra length of making sure that they collect it from the purest oceans that are still left on our planet, which is the ones in the North Sea by the Icelandic nations like Norway, Sweden, and so forth. Number 2, they filter it through ceramic stuff, which means all the PCBs and lead or mercury that's in the oceans stops in that filter. They do it 3 times. And then lastly, when they preserve it, they actually put it in a capsule with antioxidants so you don't get those fish burps. Who's ever taken fish oil before and felt like I'm getting these burps? It only comes from really two sources. One is that oil may have gone rancid. They didn't preserve it well. Or number two, your gallbladder may be struggling. We may need to do some type of cleansing of your gallbladder. But if you can do those things, it'll be amazing for you to do. This is good. And I can't tell you how many good things the most knowledgeable person I know about nutrition has said, if he was stuck on an island, he could only take one supplement with him, he would probably take these with him. They're that important. They're really, really powerful. Okay? So do whole food concentrates actually reduce inflammation? This actually is from the research of Juice Plus that says that clinical research conducted by folks ranging from highly trained athletes to overweight adults has shown that Juice Plus decreases the level of several biomarkers of inflammation. There's the researchers for you. If you want to go look those up on your own, you sure can. But they have done studies with people where they force them to eat, well, not at gunpoint, but it was part of a study. They actually let them eat like a Happy Meal type thing, and they measure what it did to their blood pressure and inflammation. One group took a placebo, one group took the actual thing, and then they did the same meal again a month later. Those who were consuming that had their blood pressure just make a small little blip, whereas the people had the same reaction when they were not taking it. They're taking a placebo. I cannot tell you how important it is. So, guys, really take a look at that. It's great stuff. Easy one to do. It takes 5 seconds, really quick. Another call to action would be this, guys. Pick 1, 2, or 3. Best advice ever. Do not enter. Right? This is what the sign says. Don't go there. Right? Pretty cool. When do you need to start? Do you want to do a 7-day diet diary? If you do, catch me before the end of the class tonight or at the end of the class. Do you want to actually have the blood work done, the C-reactive protein, the fatty acid profile, the A1C, the gut Zoomer test? In the class we've done in the past, and I forgot to do this tonight, we actually will have samples that are actually anti-inflammatory in nature. And we even have anti-inflammatory recipes too. I'm sorry I don't have those for you tonight, but I'll try and find those for you. Sample Juice Plus if you would like to. We actually will bring some samples to the office. And then there's a form that makes you, maybe it's in your packet. I hope it is. Can I take a look real quick, Kayla? Oh, where'd it go? Well, anyway, we're going to get you there's a questionnaire we actually have that you can do, and I'll put the people who have attended tonight, we'll actually have that ready for you next time you come in. And just ask me if you hear the choice, right? And it has this very clear line of demarcation. He can go down this path, but pretty much everything on the side here is going to make him feel miserable shortly after, and certainly down the road as well, too. Going this way, it's not as flashy, right? I tell people that healthy food is not as sexy. It doesn't have that red food coloring in it to catch your eye. It doesn't have that sugar to give that immediate blast of whatever, that frosting that's so nice. But again, how do you feel an hour after eating this stuff? Typically, satisfied, right? I feel regular for once. I actually feel, like lighter. And so these kind of foods, guys, really do promote healing. So there's room for this stuff. We're coming up on the holiday season. The first big one, it seems to start with Halloween. We go next door and ask for all that sugar, right? Okay. So I'm going to encourage you guys to really just try to make sure you have small portions of that. Pace yourself. Enjoy it, but don't over-enjoy. And then promote something like this, okay? So it's your choice, burn or learn, and that's the end of our class, guys. Thanks for coming tonight. And if you have any questions on what we covered tonight, it's probably in your packet, or we need to sit down and have a one-on-one. Okay? Very good. Bryn, do we actually have any samples tonight for Juice Plus? That was what you heard me say. If we don't have it, guys, if you would like it, I will bring it for sure.